Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we are going to do an update for anyone who was wondering what happened with my ice bath challenges from a year ago. Can you believe it's been a year ago? So 12 months has passed since I did my original ice bath challenge in February of 2021. So today we are going to go over what happened after the challenge, what I've currently been doing, and everything that's kind of gone on in between then and now. So let's get into it. If you haven't watched my original video, I'm going to annotate it somewhere around here, either on the left or the right. I think on my right, your left, so that you can watch that video, just to give you guys a bit of context and some backstory, and it'll serve as a bit of a stepping stone to this video. But don't worry too much if you've not watched that video, because I'll try and bring you up to speed anyway. At the end of the challenge, I vowed I was going to carry on doing the outdoor ice baths as a way of making it harder. At the time, that sounded like a good idea, but I hadn't really thought it through, because basically it was then going to be March, April and May. So obviously the spring kind of build up, the pre-summer warm up where the days get longer and the temperature rises. So what I was kind of gaining in coldness originally by going outside was probably being negated by the general air warming up and whatnot. So this continued all the way through the summer. I still carried on doing it nevertheless because I enjoyed it and I felt good. I carried on doing between 5 and 10 minutes a day, which I think is actually quite an increase from what I was doing in the original challenges where they were actually just 3 minutes. So I suppose the duration going up maybe accounted for the fact that it was a little bit more comfortable sitting out in the wheelie bin or the trash can, depending on how you call it, in the garden with the sun beating down on me. It was actually quite pleasurable. But then for the duration that I was doing it for, I tried to kind of, keep things in balance and keep it at least somewhat difficult. The only way I was able to pinch a little bit of progression on what I was doing during the summer, instead of going really long duration kind of dips, which get boring. And of course, you sort of cross into the territory of it becoming more of a stressor than a benefit at this point. So what I did instead is I started doing the ice baths later in the day. So when the sun was long out of the sky, we're talking kind of 9 or 10 at night, so not too far sort of before bedtime. And that was a little bit harder psychologically, because obviously you haven't got the sun beating down on you to warm your skin and your face up. So instead it's definitely colder outside, but I'm not going to claim by any means that this would be that hard or that cold, but it was my way of making a little bit of a micro progression. I kept this going during the autumn. It became a little bit harder. My motivation dwindled a little bit. Again, throughout this period, I didn't have such a rigid schedule, because when you make something so rigid, it takes the fun out of it. It's a little bit like the analogy of someone who makes their passion their job, and then they do too much of their passion, then it becomes a job, and then the fun goes out of it, and then you've kind of lost your passion for your job. That's how it happens. So it's a similar kind of analogy here. So I made sure not to do too much or force myself to do too much rigidity through the summer, and I can honestly say throughout the summer it was pretty much a pleasure. But then when October rolled around, that is when we got a hot tub out in our garden, one of those outdoor ones that you fill up with cold water and then it's temperature controlled. So basically around that time, I switched from the wheelie bin and the trash can to using that, because it made more sense, use less water, the water's there, the water gets colder because it's sat outside the entire time. It's temperature controlled. Obviously I wasn't heating the water up, but by having the temperature control, it measures the temperature. So this is a really nice way of knowing what temperature water I was in at any given time. And for someone like me who loves stats and figures, this gave me a whole new world of progression to play with. As we know, October is the time when people stop kind of having the door open, they stop spending so much time outdoors, the garden becomes kind of a no-go area. And the water temperature around that time was about 14 or 15 degrees, which I think is just below tap water kind of temperature, or in or around there. But keeping in mind the real feel outside is colder, so you have to go outside in the colder air and then get in the colder water. So all in all, that kind of adds to this whole feeling of it getting harder. And what I did with the numbers here is I actually made a little game with myself, or a rule. Basically, anytime I'd see a new number on the hot tub regulator, I would have to go in there and do a 5-minute dip, at least right then and there when I saw the number, providing I had time. So obviously 14 became 13, then 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, because I kept on doing this all the way through October till the latter part of November. And the latter part of November was where I set my PB, if you will, which was a 4-degree water with a -2 real feel outside in the air. This was obviously at night as well. The sun had long gone down. It was one of those cold nights where when you're breathing through your nose, you have like that kind of nostril steam coming out, and you look up and all you can see is the stars because the air is so crisp and clear, hence why it's so kind of cold. This felt like ice. This 4-degree water was literally like sitting in a block of ice. You could feel your organs kind of pulsating and fighting to try and keep the body warm, because they're like, what the hell's going on here? But that was my PR, and that was right at the end of November, I believe. Annoyingly, in December, we had to have some work done on the house, which meant that the hot tub needed to be moved because they needed to access the area, so we had to drain it, which meant I didn't have access to the outdoor water that I used to have. And my original plan was to do a 30-day challenge through December to kind of amp up from the February the year before, or in the same year, the last challenge. And I was going to do something like 5 minutes a day outdoors throughout every single day of December. But around that same time, I did the Edo Portal 30-30 squat challenge as well. So I think looking back, it was probably best to focus on one instead of both. Although now I think of it, I could probably see myself somehow trying to tie the two together. I guess it is possible. Sit in a resting squat inside the hot tub, ice cold water. Would that work? It's kind of a little bit silly, but maybe a funny one. But yeah, one thing at a time. So throughout December, I still did cold showers, but as we know, they're not really anything on the ice bar for the outdoors. Not if you're experienced, they're just more of a pleasure. But hey, you've got to do what you have to do sometimes. But the journey does not stop there, because come January the 1st, aka New Year's Day of 2022, we went for a group social sea swim at the local beach. And I didn't even know this was a thing, so I'm a little embarrassed to admit this. I call myself a cold water enthusiast, and yeah, I didn't even know that this was a regular thing, like on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, for example. People do a sea swim, and I've seen videos of people doing it all around the UK. I've seen people doing it in Canada, in the US, no doubt they do it around Europe as well, but I had no idea this was a thing. But nevertheless, this was a great chance to try and do some open water swimming, which at the back end of the original challenge video, I was saying that that's something I'd like to try because I've seen a lot of people do that. So here was my chance to do so. And I can proudly say that even since then, right up to the current day, which is the 11th of February that I'm filming this, I have done at least one open water sea swim every week since then. Sometimes two, but on average at least one, and it will range anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes in the water. So I set myself a minimum of 5 minutes in the seawater, irrespective of temperature outdoors or conditions. We just go by the sea tide time. So if the tide's in and people can get together, we will go ahead and do it. So we've kind of gone full circle and come all the way back round. So I'm now in a place where I'm qualified, or at least semi-qualified, to speak on the differences between open water swimming in rivers, lakes and seas, for example, and ice baths outside in your garden, ice baths inside, cold showers, etc. I want to create a little bit of a hierarchy here and just talk about a few of the differences between the two. So for me, the hardest one is definitely the open water sea swim. The reason for that is because the water is moving. It's such a large body of water that no matter what you do, your body heat has very little impact on the feeling of the water around you. Whereas even in those really, really cold hot tub dips that I did, when you're sitting there, you can feel, if you keep still in one area of the water, that you end up warming up the water around you somewhat. You get used to it. Hence why if you actually move your arms out to the side or your legs out to the side and swish the water around, it feels horrible. That's the last thing you want to do. I, of course, started doing that anyway, being the kind of progressively natured guy that I am. I would always try and deliberately move the water around so that I didn't get too comfortable, because I was aware of the fact that my body was making it easier. But if you're not aware of that, that is going to be a big factor. The other thing that makes the sea harder is the fact that you're out there, you can't go straight back into your nice warm house. Whereas when you're at home, you get out your ice bath, you put the towel around you, you go back in the warm house, and the warm-up process takes a lot less time than it does when you're at the sea. When you're at the sea, sometimes you've got to drive home or at least walk home. Yeah, okay, you can wear thermals, you can have hot water bottles and things like that, but also I've been doing a challenge to try and wear a t-shirt as little as possible all throughout the winter of 2021 into 2022, and so far I've only worn a hoodie twice, and that was because, yeah, for various different reasons. One of them was because someone offered it to me and I wanted to be polite, and the other one was because I'd spent a lot of time outside the previous day and felt like I'd caught a slight chill, so I just wanted to wrap up to make sure I didn't get really ill, and it worked a treat. So only twice this winter have I wore sleeves. So that makes it a lot harder because your body's continuously in a state of trying to warm itself up, and the warm-up process takes a lot longer. On the flip side, it's psychologically harder to motivate yourself to ice bath at home. Obviously, you haven't got any group to keep you accountable. You're in a nice warm house. Who wants to go out in their garden at 8, 9 o'clock at night and get in some freezing cold water, just wait a timer out or listen to something to distract themselves? Most people are not going to do that. Whereas if you've made a pact with your group to meet them at a certain time And even if you get there and you don't want to do it and you see everyone else going in, because humans are such tribal beings, we all want to go in the water and experience it ourselves. No one really wants to be left out. So the psychological side of it is really, really powerful. Although for me, I'm very self-motivated, so I don't think it's as powerful for me as it could be for you watching this, depending on your kind of background and circumstances with this stuff. And there you have it. So an update, guys. I eventually did find some open water swimming. I did sea swim. I haven't done rivers and lakes yet, like lochs. Maybe that's another thing to try. I'm not sure how they measure up to out in the open sea that's moving. I don't know if there's any real differences between the two. If anyone's interested as well, some of my PBs were, I think we did 10 minutes in 6 degrees seawater with a real feel around 4 degrees. The air was 3 or 4 degrees. That was quite a tough one. The other one that sticks out in my mind was 8 degree water with a real feel of 1 degree and a strong wind that time. That was a 5-minute dip. And that was one of those days where I was sore, I was achy, I wasn't motivated. I just wanted to stay inside and stay completely away from pushing myself. But nevertheless, we got it done, and there wasn't a lot of us on that day either. It was just me and someone else, so a lot harder basically when it's like that. But there are a couple of the ones that stick out in my memory. I'm going to carry on doing this now. I'm kind of used to it. I like the feeling of getting in and out of the sea. If you're an athlete as well, or a calisthenics athlete, and you have calluses and things, I honestly think the salt water really does kind of make a difference on your calluses and accelerates the healing process. If you're someone as well that has swum in lakes and lochs and things and sea and can make that comparison between those two and how they stack up, let me know, guys, down in the comments. I'm really interested to see if you think there's much difference, because I'd like to try that. If you do think there's a difference, I will certainly make it happen. I'm going to go ahead and try that. As always, thank you for watching the video, guys. I hope you're a little bit inspired to maybe amp up your own cold water practice. Remember, cold water is one of nature's most natural and finest stimulants. It doesn't cost the same to the body like coffee and all this other stuff. Literally just get out there in nature, feel your body, and it's scalable as well, right? So you could be cold shower at the end of a warm shower just for 30 seconds, or you could take this all the way up to 10 minutes out in the open sea in cold conditions. But of course, it's progressive. You don't want to jump straight from one to the other because it's not fun. You need to work your way up like I did over the course of quite a few years, really, when I look back on my journey. Where to next? God knows. Like I say, maybe I suppose the only way I could make this colder is potentially travel further north, places like Norway, Svalbard, Greenland, Alaska, where the average sea temperature is anywhere from as cold as -2 and as high as, say, 3 degrees, if you can even call that high, 3 or 4 degrees, where it's a lot colder. And of course, the air temperature out there is so much colder. So you never know. Maybe in the near future, there might be a trip to one of those places where I can experience even colder conditions. But if that happens, I will certainly share the journey with you. Thanks as always for watching, guys. I appreciate your time. If you like the video, just give me a little thumbs up to support the channel. Consider subscribing if you like this kind of content so far. And with that said, have yourself a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.